Gastrointestinal nematodes are a type of roundworm parasite that sheep can pick up while grazing on pasture. Once the parasite's ingested, it makes its way down the sheep's alimentary tract, where it can then cause serious problems, such as diarrhea, weight loss, and sometimes even death. However, other times, the sheep may not even show any clinical symptoms, even if it's carrying large amounts of the parasite.
Since the adult parasites in the sheep lay eggs, veterinarians need to be able to count the number of eggs in the animal's feces in order to get an indication of how many parasites are in the sheep. That's why today, we're going to show you the best techniques for collecting fecal samples so that you can better detect and treat parasite infections in your flock. To collect fecal samples, all you need is a pair of disposable gloves, lubricants, and a marker to identify which animal the fecal samples belong to. To make sure the individual sheep you sample are representative of the group you're examining for parasites, pick sheep that are grazing. These are the ones most likely to be infected with parasites. There are two methods for collecting fecal samples. The first and easiest method is to confine your sheep to a small area and observe them while they defecate. If you're fast enough, you can catch the fecal samples. Otherwise, you can retrieve them from the ground. Just make sure you're not picking up other debris such as straw, as this will contaminate the sample. The second method involves collecting fecal samples from the rectum of the sheep, and it's best to have two people when you're doing this. The advantages of this method are, you know that the samples are fresh, which animal was sampled, and that the fecal pellets are absolutely free of contamination. To make this process easier, run the sheep into a chute, or have one person restrain the sheep while the other collects the fecal sample. Keep in mind, you shouldn't sample the first 10 animals that you come across, but instead, select the animals randomly from your flock to ensure that they are more representative of the group. To collect the samples, apply a small amount of lubricant on your gloved fingers. Insert 2 fingers in the animal's rectum and gently tease out the fecal pellets. If you aren't able to collect any samples the first time, try again after about 10 or 15 minutes. Once you've collected the fecal samples, you can simply pull the glove off by reversing it over the fecal samples and tying a knot. At this point, you can also mark the glove with the sheep's ID number. Make sure you're sampling lambs and adults as separate groups, and keep those samples completely distinct. It is very important that fecal samples are kept cool, but not frozen, until they reach the laboratory. Otherwise, the parasite eggs will start to hatch and won't be counted, which means the lab results will be inaccurate.
Rather than having your samples individually analyzed at the lab, which costs more, you can instead pool together samples from 10 randomly selected animals within your flock and have them tested in a batch. This way, veterinarians should be able to give you a pretty good idea of how many fecal parasite eggs there are within your entire population.
To do a proper fecal analysis, most labs require a minimum of 5 grams of feces for each sample, which is approximately 8 to 10 fecal pellets. The results from the lab are reported to you and your veterinarian as the number of eggs per gram of feces. The count can be as low as fewer than 50 eggs per gram and up to thousands of eggs per gram. Counts lower than 500 eggs per gram are usually not considered high enough for treatment.
Once they get these results, the producers should speak to their veterinarians, and then based on the counts of the eggs but also clinical signs that they're seeing and the history of the farm, they should then decide whether they should be treating their animals or not.
Fecal sampling and parasite egg counts should be done regularly, even when there isn't any evidence of parasitism in your flock. This will ensure that your sheep stay one step ahead of infection and keep as healthy as possible. Thanks for watching. I'm Joey Soblich for Spark Air.